And hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Power Man Podcast. My name is Rory Paquette, and I am, as always, your very humble host. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a lot to talk about. We've been took a little sabbatical there for a minute, and the reason why is going to become very evident as we talk today. So, if if you haven't been following us on Instagram, then you may not know some of the things that have been going on lately, and I understand. You got your own life to worry about. You can't worry about mine and what's happening. But we're going to talk about that stuff a little bit tonight. First, hey, let's get going with a little sip of our preferred beverage, right? There we go. Good stuff. Good stuff. Got to heat up those pipes. Get ready to go. If you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, it's at Freedom Hill Coffee. Beautiful stuff. Deep, dark, rich, bold, beautiful, just like my wife. Absolutely succulent, delicious, and fantastic. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which is why I support them. Check them out on Instagram at Freedom Hill Coffee. Go for it. Check them out. You'll love it. It's a great cup of Joe. I'll be sipping that throughout the podcast. We are trying out our video feed again today to make sure it's working because we have a whole bunch of interviews that I'm trying to get done and a lot of fantastic, powerful men who want to come on this show. And I need to do a few more dry runs to make sure this is working properly before we go and do that. So you can find this today on our podcast here and also on our YouTube and Rumble channels. Alrighty. Big happenings. For those of you who saw the picture on Instagram, our Instagram is, of course, at Power of Man Podcast. All one word, at Power of Man Podcast. All one word. If you haven't seen the picture yet of my son's accident, you may want to go check it out. Go to my profile, click on it. You will very easily find the picture of the car upside down. Yeah. Upside down. I didn't want to talk about this. And I tried to do a couple other podcasts here over the last week. And what I finally realized was I couldn't. Um, Folks, if you followed us at all, you know that every podcast episode for me is a labor of love. I don't talk about something unless I believe in it. And I don't tell you anything unless it's coming from my heart and my soul. And I couldn't connect with that. I couldn't connect with the authentic version of me, frankly, when I had this in the way that I knew I needed to talk about for all of the fathers out there and all of the one day soon to be might sometime be fathers that are out there. I needed to talk about this. So here goes. I have 3 children. You guys all know that. And my baby boy, who is bigger than me and, plays third in the state in discus and, is a beast and is already turning into an incredible salesman and a very, very aware and thorough businessman all on his own. He's 18. And I got the call that nobody ever wants to get, I appreciate my friend George, who, has quite a bit of paramedic experience, reminding me that I didn't get the worst call you can get. I was lucky enough that the call I got was from my son. So I will start this by acknowledging that. I will acknowledge that, yes, it could have been worse. And that's the response I've gotten from a lot of folks is, Rory, man, it could have been much worse. Thank God it wasn't. That doesn't mean it wasn't really bad. And it doesn't mean that it hasn't, taken its toll on me and on him. Um, so I got the call, and both of my boys have been trained to start those calls with, "Dad, I'm okay, but." And in this case, I got the, "Dad, I'm okay, but the car is not." And I'm like, "What happened? What happened? Where are you? What's going on?" We went through the whole thing. And I said, "What happened? Did you hit anybody else?" And so on. It was just him in the accident. And thank God for that too. No one else was injured. And bottom line is, he's been working so hard and pushing so hard that he fell asleep behind the wheel. Um, Woke up driving into traffic, got out of that, went off the side of the road, went into a ditch, came back up out of the ditch, and the car flipped over. I dropped everything, jumped in my vehicle, raced to the scene. Thank goodness I wasn't that far away. Um, I had heard his voice on the phone, so I knew he was okay. As I came up on the site of the accident, I started to really doubt what my understanding of okay really was. I could see the car upside down from half a mile away. And I jumped up out of the car. I ran, up to it. I saw him standing up straight, talking to the police. And I just ran over to him and just hugged him and held him for what seemed like forever. And checked him. "Hey, you okay? You feel okay? You doing all right?" And he said, "Yeah, my ankle hurts a little bit, but I'm okay." So right then, I should have felt better. We walked over to the car and just started taking inventory of what we were dealing with. The car was upside down, windshield destroyed, rear windshield shattered, all four windows shattered, glass everywhere. Um, Front end demolished from the roll and going in and out of the ditch, and back end demolished because of the way the car fell into the ditch. Frame bent everywhere, body damage beyond belief. Seats torn to shreds. And as I took the inventory, as I looked at this car that my baby boy was in, and it's taken me a long time to say this, he should not have walked away from it. The first cop on the scene said the same thing to me. He said, "I do not know how he walked away from that." And folks, he didn't just walk away from it. He walked away from it without a scratch. He had a sprained ankle that lasted a day. And 48 hours later, even that was okay. And I've studied those pictures and I've gone over it all in my mind. And, everybody has some kind of reckoning after something like this. Everybody tries to figure out what it means. Everybody tries to find a way to process what they've seen, where they are. I've had plenty of people say, God was looking out for your son. And I know that there are people who listen to this podcast who have messaged me who have said, hey, listen, I like what you talk about, but you talk about God a little too much. This isn't a religious podcast. It's not why I listen to this, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't match my beliefs. My response to them is always, listen, I respect your beliefs. You can believe whatever you want. But my podcast is what it is. We've done 106 episodes and we're being downloaded in 30 different countries because I don't bullshit. I don't pretend to be somebody I'm not. I'm up here talking to fathers and husbands, and the fathers and husbands that know that I'm being authentic, that I'm not full of crap. They know that I mean what I'm talking about. Those are the guys that have been listening. Those are the guys who wait for the next episode and send me DMs and go, man, I love that episode. Thanks for this. Thanks for that. Thanks for bringing this up. It really meant a lot to me. It helped change my life. Those men, whatever their beliefs are, I don't care. I absolutely encourage any of you to have your own beliefs, but I'm not going to shy away from mine. And if I ever needed evidence that there is a God, brother, I got it. God wrapped both of his hands around my baby boy. That is the only explanation for what happened. That is the only way that he walks away from that. And like I said, you can see the picture on my Instagram account. Need a lot of this coffee. Sorry, folks. Pardon me. Yeah, too much winter and slush and changing weather and everything else up here still, guys. I apologize. But, we're going to power up and power on, power through. That's what we do here. The tow truck driver, the police officer, everyone who's seen the picture, we had several friends drive by while we were there. A couple of them actually got out and came over. No one could believe what they were looking at. And it impacted my son quite a bit. I'm not sure he can believe that he somehow rolled upside down in his car while it just got demolished from front to back, top to bottom, head to toe, and then somehow crawled out of a car that was upside down through mounds of broken glass and metal without a scratch. So, where do you go with this, right? Well, if you're a father, there's a couple of things that this reminded me of, and that I realized that I just want to kind of share the process with you now that I've talked about, what happened and where we are and giving you a pretty good picture of the scene, I will tell you that as a father, as you're trying to process this, the very first thing you do is thank God. And you can't help but think, I almost lost my kid. And it shakes you to your core because you have to come to that realization. You have to actually accept the fact that this happened, that you damn near lost your kid. Once you get through that, you immediately go into dad mode and you question and doubt and review everything in your mind, every interaction you've ever had with that child about driving, about their car, about insurance, about how to handle things if anything like this happens, about, hey, if this happens and you call me, this is what we do. When you're talking to a police officer, this is what you say and what you don't say. If this is the insurance that you need to have, and this is how you handle, yada, yada, yada. Every single aspect of the situation, you question, you question, you question, you doubt. And you do everything in your power to find a way to blame yourself. Because you just can't believe that it happened. So you immediately start saying, okay, what did I do wrong? How are we here? How is this a thing? What do I have to fix with this kid and with my other two kids, like right away to make sure this doesn't happen to, him again or to the other two? What did I miss? And I'm telling you, I've never tried so hard to blame myself for something as I did this. It was amazing, really, going through the process. And when you finally wake up and realize that it wasn't actually your fault as the father, you're left with this feeling of helplessness. Because as much as you want to thank God for stepping in, for wrapping his hands around your son and saying, not today. I have plans for you. Not today. As much as you want to just sit there and thank God and be grateful, you are overwhelmed with a feeling of absolute helplessness. Because as you stare at the wreck, as you look at the pictures and remember in your mind the piles of broken glass and shredded metal and crushed frame, and you realize that if it had gone the other way, and if you had gotten the worst phone call you can ever get, there's nothing you could have done about it. And as men, that's the hardest thing in the world for us to process. My kids ask me all the time. I mean, from the time they were born, they were like, Dad, what are you afraid of? And, the first several years of their life, I say, nothing. I'm not afraid of anything. But Dad, bulletproof. Ugh. When they get older and you start to talk to them more like grown-ups, You actually talk about what some of your fears are. And when they're as old as my two, you do admit that while you do have a semi-irrational fear of sharks and you are deathly afraid of heights, that your single biggest fear that keeps you awake at night is being helpless to save or protect your family. And I think most of us feel that way, guys. I think most of us would say that it's at least in the top 5. And there are a few moments where you are just stark, naked, helpless. There are a few moments where you are more helpless than this one. You couldn't be there to prevent him from falling asleep. You couldn't be there to stop him from getting in the car in the first place. You couldn't be there to wake him up. You couldn't be there to help him steer so that they don't go down in the ditch, come back up, and then steer the wrong way and flip over. You couldn't do anything except get the call and show up and hug them as hard as you can. And for me, everything else comes back to that. Everything else in this entire process comes back to I realized how helpless I really am to protect any of my children. At this point in my life, all 3 of them are grown. All 3 of them are off living their own lives. And so what's the moral of the story? Is it, hey, Rory, thanks a lot for bringing me down and telling me this terrible story and talking about how we're all helpless? No, there's a point. The point is this. If you're a father, you're going to hit this point yourself. I hope it doesn't happen with, an accident and a near-death experience or anything like this. I hope it just happens because they leave home to go grow and spread their wings and you realize you're helpless at that point. But the moral of the story is when you realize that, and you will, when you do, the only thing you have is to trust the job that you did in raising them, in teaching them, in guiding them, instilling values, teaching them about being safe, teaching them about how to make good decisions, teaching them about how to weigh consequences. Gentlemen, that's all you have. And the time to understand this is before they're in their car upside down in a ditch. The time to understand this is while you still have them at home. So my message to you is learn from these things that happen to me, learn from where I am, the experiences I've had, learn from what happened to me with my son, what happened to my son with his car. Learn from that. When you're done here, you hit stop, you move on to the next app on your phone, and you know what? Put it down and go talk to your kids. Talk to them about driving, making good decisions, not getting behind the wheel if you're too tired. Hey, whatever might be, causing fear in you, talk to them about being safe. Don't walk out into an empty parking lot by yourself. Basic stuff, but go over everything that you've taught them, that you've told them, that you've tried to preach to them, that you've tried to convey, And you know what? Do a serious battle check. Because when the time comes that you do realize how helpless you are, you can't go back and do it over. Standing there in that ditch looking at that car, all I had was the knowledge that I did my best. I did my best to prepare him. I did my best to teach him. And even then, I made mistakes. And like I said, I tried to blame myself. If I would have taught him about not getting behind the wheel of the car if you're feeling drowsy like that, you know what? Maybe this wouldn't happen. If I'd have taught him more defensive driving, hey, if this ever happens with the car, then you don't turn this way on a hill. One more conversation, right? Might have changed the whole outcome. I don't know. Neither do you. So while they're still at home with you, and I don't care how old they are, put this into your repertoire. Make this part of your lesson plan, guys. But while they're still teachable, make sure you're teaching them everything they need to know. Because you will be helpless one day. And the only thing you're going to be able to rely on is the job that you did. So do that battle check. Make sure you're doing the best job you can. Review every game plan you've ever put into place and do everything you can to make sure it's all right. Because, man, they are worth it. My God, they're worth it. They're worth the extra work. They're worth the review. They're worth the battle check. Trust me on this. You'll be glad you did it. Believe it. Until next time.